At 12:11, a rural crossing drops for 11 seconds. Bells, flashes, gates down. Dispatch says there are no trains in the district. The receipts don't agree. Hey everyone, tonight's true stories stay as they happened. Real times, real places. Grab a blanket, keep the volume low, and settle in. Before we start, tell us your city and the time on your screen. What are you listening on? iPhone, Android, TV, car, or earbuds? If this keeps you company, hit subscribe when we're done. New stories roll in nightly. All right, let's begin. He rolls past the crossing on patrol. Gates are up, bells quiet, road empty, wind still. At 0:11, the arms fall and the timer on his dash starts counting. He took the night truck because nights answer quiet with quiet. 2-lane road, black ribbon, pasture fence ticking by in the mirrors. The crossing sat ahead like a thought, arms up, bells asleep, flashes dark. He rolled windows an inch to taste the air. Cool, dry, no wind. In the cup holder, a dull pencil. On the clipboard, a square for the milepost. The bungalow was a grey box under cottonwoods, padlock dull with old rain. He idled to a stop where gravel begins and asphalt gives up. Rails ran straight as a rule through the ditch water. He watched them a full breath, listening for the small thrumming you feel more than hear. Nothing. He liked the kind of nothing that keeps its shape. He stepped out and let the door find its latch. The arms looked tall up close, paint scuffed where months had rubbed wind. Housings were shut, the hinge bolts wore a polite dust. He walked the line from mast to mast and back, boots making the ordinary crunch that tells you ballast still behaves. He traced the insulated joint with his eyes like reading a sentence twice. He checked the bungalow's seal without touching it. The lead was stamped right, a flat little sun at the crimp. Through the vent, the relay rack glowed a low, honest green. Nothing jittered. He put the back of his hand to the case and felt the night instead of the box, metal cold, air colder. He nodded because sometimes metal tells the truth better than people. He knelt at the approach island and looked for new shine. Railheads carried the same dull polish they'd had at dusk, no oily fingerline, no heel of fresh rust rubbed bright by a wheel. The ties wore their powdered coats soft and even. He took a slow picture in his head and set it where he puts things he might need later. He paced the road centerline past the crossbucks, counting stripes on the arms out of habit. 1, 2, 3, 4, then the red. Flashes had a film of moth on them, the light kind that only gives up when sunrise asks. He pressed a boot on the painted stop bar. Paint squeaked a little. The sound went nowhere. He liked that the sound had nowhere to go. He leaned on the hood to write. MP 128.7, 2356, gates up, bells quiet, wind nil, he printed in square letters that have kept him out of arguments. He added his initials because initials say, I stood here. He turned the pencil once more and tucked it under the clip. The clip clicked, a small, certain answer he always trusts. He gave the track a last look, from knee height. You learn more from knees than shoulders. Spike heads sat where they should. Plates matched holes they were given. The ditch water held one star broken into shivers by a mosquito. He wiped at a gnat on his cheek and missed, then laughed at himself so the night would know he wasn't trying to be dramatic. He listened for the road's version of company. Far east, a single tractor running tired lines. West, nothing but dog and field. He turned his head and let each ear be in charge once. The rails kept quiet. He tugged his sleeve down past his wrist for the drive and looked at the sky like it might have a note pinned to it. Back in the cab, he let the heater pick one number and stay there. The dash clock winked, drone 09, and made a small liar of his watch by a minute. He did not fix the watch, the dash would win. He logged the difference because logs keep peace later. He set the radio so dispatch wouldn't get echoed back at itself when he answered. He pulled forward and let the tires roll the gravel into the kind of sound that says a place is being left, not escaped. In the mirror, the crossbucks made neat white X's in the dark, steady on their posts like good letters. He checked the milepost again, whispered it to fix it, and eased back to 2-lane speed. The crossing stayed where it belonged, open and ordinary. He'd barely cleared the crossing when the cab filled with Bell, clean, quick, like metal deciding. In the rear view, flashers woke red on red. He eased the truck to the shoulder and let the wheels find gravel. The arms started down, no headlight east or west, no horn. He thumbed his dash timer and watched numbers begin to count a minute that wasn't supposed to happen. Windows down an inch, he let the cold in and listened for rail. That low wire hum you feel in teeth before you hear it. Nothing. Bells kept their tidy beat. Flashers washed the ditch grass like a heartbeat testing itself. He leaned across the wheel and searched both approaches again. Slow, careful, the way you look for a wallet you know you put down. The arms reached level and held the road shut. Red on red, steady. He kept the timer running and made himself breathe to it. 11 seconds is a long time when nothing occupies it. He looked for any light finding steel in the distance. Farm, truck, wrong reflection, something. The rails stayed dark, the kind of dark that knows it is being watched. At co 11:13 the bells quit clean and the arms rose like they'd been thanked. He stopped the timer at 11:01 and didn't round it. He watched one more cycle of flashes go dark, then looked at the empty black between crossbucks. The road laid itself flat again, patient, like a dog that doesn't understand why it was told to sit. He rolled forward to clear the track and parked where the bungalow lamp painted gravel. Heater down 1 notch, hazards off, radio volume where it wouldn't bite. He wrote with the pencil that always smudges 011, 2011, 13. Gates down, no headlight, no horn, road empty. He pressed the period hard so the dot would say he meant it. He stepped out and let the door close itself, soft. Air had that clean, coin taste it gets on dry nights. The windsock on the fence was a limp ribbon, no help. He stood where tires had been and touched the stop bar paint with the toe of his boot. It squeaked the small squeak paint gives when it hasn't been asked for a while. He walked to the arm hinge and set 2 fingers under the counterweight. Still cool from night, not the warm you get from overwork. He checked the mast bolts with his eyes, then his palm. Nothing loosened, nothing buzzed. The cable hangers said their quiet yes. He let that yes stay in his hand a second, and then let it go. He scanned both approaches again, this time with his chin low so the rails could be a straight edge against the world. From that angle, the road looked like paper, the track like the line you fold on. No shape moved on that line. The ditch water carried 1 red flash and forgot it in a ripple. He keyed dispatch, the careful way that doesn't make a double. District maintainer at 128.7, unsignaled activation, 11 seconds, no movement observed. The speaker gave back the calm office voice. Copy 1287, no trains in your district, panel shows clear. He made the words sit by repeating them. No trains, panel clear. He wrote them down so they couldn't change later. He backed the truck until the nose lined with the bungalow door. He didn't open it. The seal was still stamped. He read the stamp without touching it, the way you read a name on a door you haven't been invited through. He put his ear to the metal and heard the soft room sound of relays, not trying to be interesting. He finished the minute by giving the crossing one more still look. Road empty, rails patient, arms up, bells quiet. He wrote the short line that keeps nights honest. 011 drop, 11.1s, no headlight, no horn, no rail hum, district dark. He boxed 11.1 and set the pencil under the clip until it clicked, a small, certain sound inside a larger, uncertain one. He unlocked the bungalow and let the metal door stop against his boot. Inside smelled like dust, ozone, and a little old rain. Relay rack sat polite, lamps low and steady. He took the clipboard from its hook and woke the recorder screen. Events populated in the calm way numbers do when they think they'll be believed. Time block read occupied 01102 or 01113. 11 clean seconds, no lead-in chatter, no jitter. Just a neat bracket around a minute that had no train. He said it once, quietly, to make it true for his pencil. 011 to 013. He wrote the range and boxed it so his eye would land there later without asking. He scrolled to the crossing controller. Flashes on 001102, bells on 001102, gates down 001105, then bells off, 001113, gates up, 0011T15. The sequence walked in straight shoes. Nothing in the timings wore a limp. He liked when numbers marched, even if they were marching in the wrong parade. At the axle counter pane, the trace spiked pluds 2, hesitated, then fell, 2, all inside the same 11 seconds. That's a single truck's worth of story sneaking in and sneaking out. He stared until the shape felt like a lie told by someone who practices. He wrote +22 same window and circled the slash so he wouldn't forget the order. He listened to the relay with his head near the coil. Quiet, regular hum, the kind that says the world still knows which side is closed. He held his phone by the door seam and recorded a minute of nothing, because later, nothing becomes something when it fits a timestamp. He named the file with the milepost and time, so it wouldn't get lost. He checked the power log. Battery float steady, charger not hunting, no brownout note. Temperature strip under the shelf sat in the blue. He pressed it. Cool tape, cool fingers. He wrote no power event. That line calms supervisors like a blanket, and sometimes it calms him too. The door hinge ticked once as the sheet metal remembered he'd opened it. He called dispatch on the service channel. Maintainer at 128.7, recorder shows occupied 01102 to 01113, axle trace +2 -2, crossing full sequence. The office voice came back level. Copy your times. Our panel shows no movement in that block before, during, after. He wrote panel clear in the margin and underlined after. He printed the event strip, watched the thermal paper crawl out white and then grey with numbers. It felt warm like a shallow breath. He laid it flat on the inside lid so it wouldn't curl. He penciled arrows at start and end, the way teachers taught when they wanted eyes to land on the right lines. He backed out to the threshold and watched the road through the open door, like the world might correct itself if he looked from a different room. Bells were quiet, arms high. The rails held their dark like a rule they respected. He folded the strip into thirds and slid it into the vest pocket that doesn't lose things. Before he shut the door, he laid his palm on the padlock shackle. Metal should have taken the night by now. It hadn't. It felt not warm exactly, just less cold than the case. He pressed it to his cheek and let his skin decide. He wrote lock warmer than air, then stood still long enough to be sure that wasn't a story he wanted to tell himself. He closed the bungalow, tugged once to hear the hasp say yes, and looked up the line. The mile of track toward the curve was a straight thought. He read it for shine and found none. Back in the cab, he logged the cleanest version, OCC 01102 or 01113 +2, 2, panel clear, lock less cold. The pencil dot at the end made the line feel finished, even if the night wasn't. He stood with the bungalow door shut and the lock settled. Ear to metal, he waited out one full, slow breath. Inside, the relay room sounded like a pocket of weather. Hush, a faint transformer hum, the tick a sheet gives as it cools. He stayed until the silence had weight, then caught it, one crisp click, alone, like a coin deciding to stop spinning. He hit record on his phone and held the mic to the door seam. 30 seconds of room sound went by, careful and plain. Then another click, not double, not chattering, just a single truth landing where the first had. He noted the second mark on his watch bezel with a thumbnail. If the recorder times later agreed, he'd have a braid to hold. He checked the hasp again for the dumb reason men do when they don't want to be wrong. Lead seal still stamped, shackle fully home, nothing scuffed. He pressed the padlock to the back of his knuckles. Night had bitten the truck mirrors. It hadn't convinced this lock. He wrote, case locked. Relay click, X2, lock less cold, and boxed the X2. He crouched and put his eye level with the door seam, the way you sight a rifle. The faint green of the rack LEDs made a low strip in there. Nothing flickered, nothing chased its tail. He breathed against the metal and watched the fog his mouth made flatten to grey. It cleared from the centre last. He didn't write that, not yet. He walked the outside of the bungalow like a dog that knows fences, corners square, conduit tight to the wall, ground strap unfrayed. The crushed gravel told a plain story, his fresh boot prints and the old rounded ones that make a place look permanent. He looked for a new line that cut through those. Gravel stayed honest. Back at the mast, he put fingertips on the gate arm housing and felt only night. The hinge bolt had that smooth dust you ruin if you touch it. He didn't. He looked at the counterweight and imagined heat there, then made himself test. Cold metal gave him nothing to argue with. He liked when nothing kept its job. He walked the approach island, sweeping the rail with a flashlight held low and wide. The beam made a moving seam of pale, no fresh polish, no flange rise rubbed bright. At one tie, mid-island, powdered dirt showed a faint 3-inch toe drag, crescent thin. He leaned close. No companion mark. He pictured a foot reconsidering and set the picture aside. He listened for the long, low song a train makes far off when steel is telling on steel. Windsock hung dead. Treeline made no sentence. Bells slept like they had never learned their part. Everything that could swear it was night swore well. He marked the toe drag with a pencil dot on the tie's end grain and stepped back. He tongued the radio to service channel. Maintainer 128.7, case sealed, exterior good, intermittent single click heard through door. The office voice came back level. Copy, panel still clear. He pressed the handset against his jacket so the warmth in his chest wouldn't pretend to be radio heat and wrote panel clear again anyway. He set the phone on the bungalow sill and recorded 2 more minutes of nothing, because later, nothing matters if it knows when it happened. At 90 seconds, the click arrived again. Same polite wait. He didn't flinch. He let the recorder eat it and kept his face still so the night wouldn't notice he'd heard. He pocketed the phone, eyed the rails as if they could confess, and chose to wait outside the locked door rather than inside it. If a room is going to make a sound, he wanted the sound to cross to him, not surround him. He leaned against the truck fender, wrote the clean line, case locked, charted relay, single click, X12, 44 to 92, and let the pencil dot at the end be bigger than it needed to be. He keyed the cabinet at the pole and woke the roadside camera head. The menu came up in tired grey, letters soft like chalk. He scrubbed back to 0011. On screen, the road looked like paper and the rails like the fold line. He pressed play and let the minute roll, telling himself he wanted simple, lights on, arms down, arms up, done. At 4 seconds, the picture hiccuped and returned to the same frame. Ditch grass shivering once, a moth in mid-flight between flashes. The time code advanced, the image repeated. He scrubbed again to be fair. Same 4-second rhythm. Shiver, moth, reset. Shiver, moth, reset. He wrote loop 4's TC honest, so the contradiction wouldn't get to move around. He stepped back to be sure the live world wasn't copying the loop. Arms high, flashes dark, grass steady. He looked at the camera lens and it looked back without glare. He held a hand in front, then moved it away. Live view obeyed, no lag, no ghost. Playback alone had decided to be a metronome set wrong. He exported the segment around 11:02 11:20 to the thumb drive he keeps for nights that try to argue. The progress bar crept like cold glue. He labeled the file with milepost, date, minute, and loop 4s, so future him wouldn't have to remember what midnight had tried to do. He watched the camera write the lie faithfully to plastic. He tried a different angle, the west approach, just to be fair to the system. The 4-second loop lived there too. Shimmer, moth, return. 2 poles agreeing to repeat a picture is not a comfort. He checked the hash after export and penciled it. MD5, 7E. A good hash is a fence. If the fence changes, he'll know which side moved. He looked up at the arm housings while the last file saved. Paint held its dull. The hinge plates were still the color of dust. He kept his hands off. A smudge you make to find truth becomes a smudge you have to explain later. He let the air do the touching and counted that as restraint. He scrolled deeper in the cam menu to log details he never needs in daytime. Firmware build, uptime, internal temp. The numbers sat patient and boring. Uptime, 29. Temp, 9°C. If a thing is going to lie, he prefers it lie loudly. This one lied like a child with good grades. He walked the shoulder to confirm what pixels promised. No skid, no fresh rock thrown, no rubbed edge at the fog line. The stop bar still squeaked faint under boot. He dusted a gloved fingertip across the mast base, came away with clean powder. Not much, not little, just the measure a calm night gives. At the truck he cued the export on the dash screen and played both approaches side by side. 2 different time codes marched in step while the same moth beat its 4-second wings forever. He let the clips run 6 loops and then paused on the exact frame where ditch grass leaned. He wrote same frame both cams and underlined both. He spoke the clean version into the memo app because a voice sometimes holds steadier than a pencil. 0011, both approaches, playback loop 4 seconds, time code increments, live view, normal. He saved it, then saved it again because nights like to erase. He set the thumb drive in the fleece pocket that doesn't forget. Before he shut the cabinet, he pressed 2 fingers to its door. Metal felt the way the lock should have felt earlier. Plain cold, the kind you can trust. He told the camera, "Thank you for telling me you're wrong," a quiet habit that keeps him from arguing with tools. He wrote the short line, cam loop, "She honest," export saved, and let the pencil dot be the loudest part. He walked the east approach first, lamp low so steel could speak. Railhead showed that matte, used polish, no bright strip that fresh wheels carve. Webb wore a thin film of ditch dust. Tie plates sat where plates live, bolts honest in their holes. He touched the base once with a knuckle. Cold, night cold, the kind that doesn't learn from stories. He crouched at the insulated joint and looked for shunt bars out of place. Bond wires hugged their lugs like good habits. No chipped epoxy, no cracked web paint, no last-minute scrape pretending to be work. He slid 2 fingers under the bond and felt the nothing he wanted, air and shadow. He wrote IJ clean. Bonds snug on the margin and underlined clean. He moved tie to tie, reading ballast like print, Angular rock, no skid, no roll, no fresh throw toward the shoulder. The ditch water pooled clear around a reed. When his boot nudged the mud, silt rose and fell slow, unbothered. He paused to let that stillness be a receipt, because sometimes a puddle tells truth better than paper can. At the island he traced the moulded cable that feeds the masts, rub marks right where they belong, nothing new. The conduit straps were dull with long weather, none bit into bright metal. He pressed thumb to a strap and came up with powder. He left the powder alone. Fingerprints you make belong to you forever in the wrong meeting. He set the lamp on the railhead and watched how it threw a line. True steel gives a straight seam of light. Tonight's seam stayed straight, no dips, no bright nick where a flange had kissed lately. He dragged the beam forward 6 ties, same seam. He turned the lamp off a second just to see the dark shape of track without help. It held. Westward he swept the counterside, joint bars, spikes, plates, the quiet grammar of track. A paper moth fussed at the beam once and quit. He flicked the moth away with a breath and let the breath be proof he was still a person in this, not only a meter. His handwriting felt steadier after that. He knelt to listen, nose close to steel, for that far wire singing that travels when weight is thinking about you. Silence held clean. He set his palm flat on the head and counted 8. No tremor. He slid his palm to the web, then the base. Same answer. He wrote no vibration, no song, and drew a small square around the words. Near mid-island, powdered dirt on a tie kept its even coat. He took a careful pinch and let it fall. The grains landed without clumping, the way dry should. He remembered the faint toe drag from earlier, checked for its twin here, and found none. He did not chase ghosts across wood. He only wrote powder, even, no smear, and moved on. He checked the wheel detector paddles for hang-ups. Springs rested easy, faces unmarked. He flexed a harness lightly. The cable answered with the soft give wire should have. No abrasion, no shined corner. He looked at the bracket screws and pictured the torque wrench back at the shop, then reminded himself, pictures aren't receipts. He put his hand down. Back at the crossbucks he squinted down both approaches again with chin low so rail became ruler. The road framed the track like parentheses. No light found steel, no steel returned light. He let that emptiness be counted as a thing, not a gap. He wrote approaches clear ruler line true, because sometimes you need your own words to stop wandering. At the truck he laid his notes across the wheel and read them aloud once, quiet, steady, without decoration, so the night could decide to argue if it wanted. It didn't. He capped the pencil, breathed a patient breath, and told himself the next step was waiting, not searching. You wait to see if the world repeats its idea, then you decide what to call it. He keyed the controller into maintenance and walked the sequence. Flashes first, steady red, bells next, clear tone, arms down on his command, then up. Each piece obeyed like a drill. He set it back to normal, logged manual cycle good, and stepped away so the system could choose on its own. Sometimes you fix a thing by making sure it knows you're watching. He parked nose to the bungalow and killed the engine. Windows cracked an inch, heater low. The world settled into 2 sounds, insects working the ditch and his jacket sleeve whispering when he moved. He set his dash timer to 0 and let it blink there. Waiting is a tool. You measure silence the same way you measure noise. He stood at the shoulder where gravel meets asphalt and picked a star to be his metronome. If the star drifted behind the mast in 5 minutes, he'd move. A plan, even a simple one, keeps the mind from chasing whatever it wants. He told himself. Breathe to the star, write only the parts that happen. He laid the clipboard on the hood and sketched the crossing by habit: 2 masts, bungalow box, east curve, west straight. In the margins he left small squares for numbers he hoped wouldn't arrive: OCC, axles, drop. He drew 1 extra square labelled Y and didn't smile at it. A blank square can be a promise or a dare. He checked the radio volume by tapping the mic once with a fingernail, just enough to hear his own click come back. He set the handset face down so its speaker wouldn't throw warmth at his palm and trick him into writing it. He wrote radio OK, vol 3, face down, and boxed it because future arguments love tiny details. He walked the center line, counting stripes to feel the road's rhythm again. Paint squeaked under boot, honest as ever. At mid-lane he turned slowly, letting the crossing fill his whole view. Arms high, flashers dead, road empty, rails a straight thought. He stood there until the shape felt ordinary again. Ordinary matters. It's the ruler you measure strange against. He listened with teeth for the wire hum a far train sends. Nothing. He listened with ribs for the bass and near train pushes. Nothing. He pressed 2 fingers to the mast and felt only his own pulse. He took them away and waited for it to leave his skin. It did. He wrote no hum, no push, self only. He sat on the truck step to change the angle. The ditch smelled like iron and old grass. A frog tested 1 note, thought better of it, and went still. He let that be the loudest thing for a minute. Sometimes you learn more from what gives up than from what tries. He noted ditch still ha frog aborts and left space after it. He reset the dash timer to 0 again, not because it mattered, but because hands like jobs. The star had moved a finger's width toward the mast, right on schedule. His plan had kept time. He let that small win make room in his chest where worry wanted to set up a chair. He looked at the bungalow door without touching it. The padlock reflected a thin line from his lamp and gave it back cold. He breathed on the shackle by accident and watched fog clear from the edges first, the middle last. He didn't write that, not yet. He wrote case closed and told himself repetition is its own kind of faith. He stood again in the lane and let the night declare itself. Wind nil, road empty, rails patient, arms high. He wrote 1 more line, the line you write before you tempt a minute to misbehave. Reset complete, standing by, observe only. He clicked the pencil back under the clip, a neat sound, and waited to see what the world thought that sound meant. The star reached the mast edge when the world answered. Bells woke crisp like a decision arriving on time. Flashers washed the ditch red. He didn't move. He let the minute come to him. Thumb found the dash timer, pressed once. Arms started down with that practiced weight, chains giving half a voice. He looked east, then west. No headlight, no horn. Rails kept their shut mouth. He counted the drop without speaking. 4, 5. The bars levelled across the road. The bell tone held perfect. No wobble, like a metronome set by a careful hand. He leaned into the open window to taste for rail. Teeth waiting for that low wire to wake. Nothing. The timer ticked neat seconds he could not spend on a train. At 0:26:03 the flash cadence steadied. At 0:26:12 the bells died. At 0:26:14 the arms rose, polite as store doors. He stopped the timer at 9.2 and wrote the digits first so they wouldn't fade. 9.2s. He let his hand rest a beat so the pencil would not add something his eyes hadn't seen. The road lay open again, not sorry at all. He crossed to the bungalow and keyed in. Screen woke soft. Event list scrolled with the calm face numbers put on when they know they'll be asked to testify. A fresh block, occupied 0:26, 3, 0:26, 12. 9 seconds, clean, no chatter, no leaden noise. He boxed the range and said it once, quiet to hear it in the room. 9. He opened the axle counter pane. Trace lay flat. No spikes, no +2, no 2, just a stubborn line that said nothing happened. He tapped the bezel with a fingernail, not to wake it, only to remind his hand who was in charge. The line did not change. He wrote axles, none, and circled it because the absence was the story. He stepped back to live track view, as if the glass might be lying less than the software. Rails returned their straight black. He held the door with a knee and leaned his ear to the rack. Relay hum stayed steady. No click marked a start or stop near those 9 seconds. He recorded a minute anyway because later a quiet minute can prove the loud ones. He pinged dispatch on service. Maintainer 128.7, second activation 002603002612. Recorder shows occupied. Axles show none. Office voice gave him the same good calm. Copy. Panel still clear? No trains authorized. He repeated no trains back into the radio so the sentence would harden, then wrote it where it couldn't leave the page. He backed out and stood road center again. Paint squeaked under his boot. Arms were up, flashers dark, bell housings like sleeping mouths. He let his anger float away and did the smaller job. Breathe to 4, write to 5. 9.2, no hum, no headlight, no horn went on the log in square letters that have saved him more than once. At the mast, he set 2 fingers under the counterweight. Still night cold, the hinge plate held its polite dust. He looked at the chain for any fresh rub bright enough to be a clue. Nothing. He put the shadow back where he found it and did not invent heat. Hardware steady joined the line, a little ballast on words that might lift. He walked mid-island to the tie with the pencil dot from earlier. Powder still lay even, the crescent toe drag hadn't grown. He dusted the surface with a breath and watched it not move. He let that refusal count as a receipt. Sometimes the thing that doesn't change is the one telling the truth. He wrote toe drag unchanged and boxed it small. Back at the truck, he laid the clipboard on the hood and drew a tiny map of what disagreed. Recorder, yes. Axles, no. Dispatch, none. Me, none. 4 corners of a square that refused to be a picture. He put 9.2s in the middle like a thumbtack and pressed the pencil dot hard enough to feel it through the paper. He set the clipboard on the hood, breathed once to square the words, and keyed the service channel. Maintainer at milepost 128.7, 2 activations logged, second at 0:26:03:00:2612, no train observed. He kept his voice level like reading a grocery list. The radio's carrier felt steady in his palm, a small, honest weight that didn't try to be meaning. Dispatch came back with that office calm that keeps people upright. Copy 1287. Panel shows district dark before, during, after. No authorities issued. He wrote district dark in block letters so it couldn't shrink later. He repeated the phrase into the mic, not because they needed it, but because repetition nails a sentence to the table where it can't walk off. He snapped a photo of the recorder screen. Occupied 00:26:03, 00:26:12. He framed the time in the corner, got his watch face in the edge on purpose, and let the bungalow lamp smear a little shine across the glass so no one would call it a stock image. He checked the picture once, twice, then saved it to the folder that does not get cleaned. He took a second shot of the axle counter pane. Flat trace, no spikes, the none that matters. He added a third of the crossing controller sequence, so the order of lights and arms had a face. 3 angles make a triangle. Triangles don't fall over as easy as lines. He wrote 3 shots sent and circled the word 3. He texted the bundle to dispatch and the supervisor group with a blunt line. MP 128.7 unsignaled activations. Recorder, yes. Axles, no. No train seen. The progress bar crawled. He waited for the tiny delivered tags to appear because delivery is its own receipt. When they popped, he let his shoulders drop a half-inch and called that a win he was allowed. He added GPS to the note, reading it off the dash. N 412283 W 97.4410. He spoke the numbers once into the radio so the tape would wear them. He wrote them on the log so the paper would keep them. A place named twice is harder to argue with. He boxed the chords and drew a small arrow toward bungalow. "Advise proceed, no trains in district," dispatch said, same calm voice like rain reading its schedule. He said proceed back so it would stick to his tongue. He did not love that word tonight. He wrote proceed, district dark, and made the slash long, a little fence to lean against when someone asks later why he stayed. He emailed the camera exports with their hashes. Loop 4 as east and loop 4 south west. Subject line carried the time block. Body carried the clean line. Time code increments, image repeats. Live view, normal. He attached the MD5 strings because numbers can't have opinions. He pressed send and watched the phone think, then say sent. He thanked the tiny word under his breath. He clicked the memo app and spoke the short version for future him. 0026 activation, 9.2 seconds, recorder yes, axles no, district dark, photos sent, GPS logged. Hearing his own voice repeat the bones of it put air back in his ribs. He saved it, then saved it again, because nights like this sometimes eat the first plate. He keyed the mic once more, careful not to step on anyone. Staying on site through 0100 monitoring. The office voice. Copy, stay, call any change. He set the radio face down so speaker heat wouldn't pretend to be proof. He wrote monitor to Bo120 and put a small dot beside it, his mark for a promise he intends to keep. Before closing the bungalow door, he tried the padlock with 2 fingers. Metal gave him the cold he wanted this time. He held it there an extra breath to be sure, then let it hang straight. Back at the truck he boxed the last line, logs, sent, panel, clear, proceed, and let the pencil dot at the end be deliberate, a tiny nail in the board of the minute. He popped the small lid on the joint box and checked the wheel sensor readout. The tiny screen wore a green yes, like it loved simple answers. History showed a 0.4's wheel present blip right inside the 9-second drop. He stared at the number until it felt like a pebble in his shoe. He wrote WP 0.4s and let the pencil pause there. He metered the track circuit at the bond posts, leads neat, tips clean. Voltage dipped a whisper when he shunted with the test bar, then came home smooth. He matched the dip to record a cadence with his watch, counting under breath. Close enough to argue. He wrote TC dip, pays recorder rhythm, then drew a thin question mark he didn't love. He walked the feeder back to the bungalow and checked the rack meter. Amateur steady, no hunting, no hiccup. The charger float line sat where float sits when a room behaves. He pressed the panel once for luck and once for proof. The relay hum stayed polite. He wrote power stable because sometimes 3 easy syllables keep a knight from growing teeth. He set the portable shunt on the head at mid-island and watched the recorder catch it in real time. Occupied flag, bells off because he'd muted them, clear when he lifted. That part wore straight shoes. He underlined shunt good so later he could show someone, look, rules still work when I make them. He crouched over the insulated joint and closed the bar lightly across head and head. The recorder agreed, occupied, then clear. He did it twice more to let his hands trust his eyes. Each time, the world obeyed. He wrote, IJ responds and boxed it. Boxes make little fences for facts. They keep the goats from the garden. He checked the counter's coil inputs with the pocket meter. Clean transitions on each test. No ghosting, no chatter. He pushed the harness with 2 fingers. Wires gave the soft answer wires should. He stopped before a nudge became a story and wrote inputs clean, harness calm in small letters that don't brag. He scrolled the axle counter again, knowing, and got back a flat lie. No +2, no 2 for the 9-second drop, just a horizon line pretending the night had nothing to say. He printed the trace anyway and clipped it to the board beside the wheel-present blip, the way you pin two insects that shouldn't live in the same jar. He checked the flange detector paddles for wobble, springs quiet, faces square. He rapped the housing once with a knuckle. It answered wood dull, not metal hollow. He pressed a thumbnail to a screw and felt only the threads old stubborn. He wrote, paddles okay, case solid, and felt the relief of boring words do their job. He leaned his ear to the rail and listened through the bone. No far wire song, no near push. Teeth stayed dumb. He laid a fingertip on the web and counted 8 again. Nothing. He put his meter leads away, slow, so the quiet would not think he was rushing it. He wrote steel, says nothing, and left the margin wide after it. He closed the joint box and waited a breath with a palm on its lid. Metal gave back, plain cold. The world chooses when to be dramatic. Tonight it had picked paperwork and riddles. He snapped the hasp shut and let the small click be the only noise he owned. Instruments disagree went on the line, and he made the period at the end a little darker. Back at the truck he laid the 4 receipts side by side. Recorder, yes. Axle, no. Wheel present, 0.4s. Track dip in rhythm. He drew lines between them until it looked like a kite with a string cut. He wrote the sentence he could stand behind. Electrical shunt without metal seen. Then under it, smaller. Seen, teat, not yet. He closed the board and let the night keep the last word. He walked back to the bungalow to close the loop in his head. Doors make good answers. Steel says yes or no without tone. The lamp inside painted a thin rectangle across gravel through the vent slots. He stood where the rectangle ended and let his breath decide to slow. A calm minute is a ruler. You lay the next minute against it. He took the padlock in 2 fingers, same as earlier. Night had thrown its weight across the pasture. Metal should have learned the lesson. It hadn't. Not warm like coffee, just less cold than the door it guarded. He held it long enough to make sure his hand wasn't lying. Then he put the back of his knuckles to it and trusted bone. He pressed the shackle against his cheek, the way linemen do when thermals are somewhere else. Skin is the best meter when pride shuts up. Steel gave him a not-cold print that felt earned, not lucky. He stepped back and wrote lock less cold than case. He boxed it because you don't want later you to edit the word less into warm. He palmed the door skin beside the lock. That panel wore night honest, flat cold, no seam of heat under paint, no cheat from a lamp inside. He moved 3 inches left, 3 inches right, up 1 rib, down 1. Same answer. Only the lock didn't want to belong to this weather. He wrote door cold, only lock argues. He crouched and checked the concrete plinth the case sits on. Concrete keeps the day longer than steel. Tonight it had let go. He set his palm and counted 8, felt nothing but the ordinary relic of sun that had left hours ago. He wrote plinth cool because sometimes you need a boring friend standing next to your strange one. He tried to be wrong on purpose. He warmed his own fingers against his jacket, then touched the lock again, then the door, then the truck mirror as a control. Mirror bit his fingers, door bit less, lock bit least. He wrote the order, mirror, door, lock, because sequences are rails. They carry you past the swamps. He put his ear to the seam and waited. Relay hum stayed the same patient note. No click this time. He let the disappointment be small and useful. You don't need the drums every minute to believe in a parade. He jotted no, Click observed, and left a little space for the time in case one arrived late. He stepped to the mast and set 2 fingers on the hinge plate, then the counterweight, then the chain. All 3 kept the same plain cold. He liked that. He needed that. He wrote hardware honest and underlined it. Underlines are for things you're willing to say out loud in front of a table later. He walked to the tie where the pencil dot marks the faint toe drag. Powder, still even. He blew a thin breath across the spot and watched grains move the way dry should. He touched the wood beside it. Cool. The dot held its job. He added toe drag, unchanged, board, cool, and let the words carry their own small gravity. Back at the truck, he held the padlock photo in the screen glow and compared it to the real thing. Same angle, same glare line, same little pit on the shackle. He took a second picture with his cheek still pink from the touch so future him would remember which night this was. He tagged it less cold 02 and saved it twice. He finished the line clean, lock less cold, door cold, plinth cool, no click, hardware honest. He made the period at the end a little darker and let his hand rest. Nights like this don't need big decisions, they need neat sentences. He put the pencil back under the clip. It clicked, polite, the only thing that absolutely did what it was told. Headlights slid over the pasture fence from the west, slow, high ride, county pattern. He lifted a hand so they'd know the truck wasn't a ditch nap. The cruiser eased to the shoulder, nose politely past his bumper, light bar dark to let the night stay itself. He tasted dust and the little plastic smell cruisers keep when heat meets radios. The deputy stepped out with a thermos and the posture of someone who knows roads more than clocks. "You the crossing?" he asked, not unkind. "Me," he said. Arms dropped twice, 11, then 9. District dark. The deputy nodded like fences nod in wind. Words went into his cup and came back as steam. "Dash saw one of 'em," the deputy said, tapping the roof cam with 2 fingers. "Arms down, bells going, no headlight either way." He scratched the back of his neck like he was checking for a plug. "Hate that sound out here." He did not disagree. He wrote, "Dash saw drop, no train," before the sentence could drift. They stood lane center and let the crossing be the rest of the conversation. Arms high, flashes dead. The bungalow, a square breathing box on gravel. "Wind?" the deputy offered, but the sock hung like a ribbon that hadn't learned how. "No," he said, "not the kind that counts." They let the word fall flat and stay there. The deputy asked for times because good reports like numbers. He gave 0011 02 0011 13 and 0026 03 0026 12, clean, not rounded. The deputy repeated them back, picking the digits like he might pick a lock. He wrote them in his notebook with a carpenter pencil, lines fat enough to be seen in a mirror if the world needed one. "Want my clip?" the deputy said. "It's just arms and bells." "Both help," he said. The deputy toggled menus on the dash screen until the minute appeared, then paused on a frame where the road wore red like it had a pulse. He held his phone up and took the picture. He wrote county clip ref and the unit number, and they walked to the tie mid-island with the pencil dot. "That yours?" the deputy asked, toe to the faint crescent. "No," he said, drawn before I got bold. The deputy made a face that meant the sentence could be a joke later, not now. He crouched and looked for a second mark, found none, and let the ground be smarter than them. Radio popped in the cruiser, 2 towns away, deer, and a mailbox. The deputy left the door open so the call could wander through the night and learn nothing here. "Want me to sit at the far approach a while?" he asked. "If you've got 5, he said. 5 minutes is a lifetime when a minute tries to grow teeth. The deputy parked west, just beyond where a headlight could surprise, and faced the crossing with his cam running. He shut his engine and let county silence lean on steel. He texted the unit number to dispatch so the panel would have a friend on paper. Unit 214 Westwatch went in the margin with a box around it. They watched their two watches, his dash timer blinking zeros, the deputy's roof cam blue triangle working. Stars held. The sock gave nothing. Rails kept dark. He felt how calm can stack until it's heavy. He wrote joint observation in nil because counting nothing is still counting. He let the line sit there and grow honest. The deputy rolled back, slow. "Saw you nothing," he said, as if it were a thing you could hold. "Holler if it does the song again." He tipped the thermos and drove off with his light bar still quiet, his tail lights tiny coins. He wrote, "Deputy observed he'd no drop," and put a dot after it. He meant to believe. He laid the clipboard on the hood and chose 3 tiny tells he trusts when knights argue. Chalk is for rail, dust is for ties, paper is for doors. Simple tools keep the mind from getting clever. He wrote, set tells at the top corner, so future him wouldn't forget why small things were about to matter more than big ones. He snapped a thin chalk line across the east railhead at mid-island, one clean stripe, heel to heel, bright against the dull polish. If steel rubs steel, chalk breaks. If chalk holds, your story holds. He stepped back, blinked once to fix the picture, and wrote chalk east, set in square letters that don't wander when you're tired. On the west rail he drew a second stripe, 2 ties beyond the insulated joint, just far enough that a brush wouldn't catch both at once. He tapped the rail with the chalk stub so dust would settle where it liked, then pocketed the stub so no new mark could pretend to be his. He added chalk west, set to the margin, and underlined west. He scooped a pinch of powdered ballast from the shoulder and sifted it across 2 center ties, a light veil that would show any slide or scrape. Not a trap, just a photograph you don't have to develop. Grains landed without clump, the way dry should. He wrote dust spread mid and drew a small rectangle where it lay. At the bungalow, he tore a ribbon from a notepad and tucked it in the door seam high, paper edge inside, tail out, a whisper of white that would fall if the door moved or bowed. He closed the hasp and let the padlock hang straight. He wrote paper in seam high, because high matters. When wind wants credit, it doesn't deserve. He thumbed his watch and logged the set time for all 3. E041. Times make ladders. Later, if something changes, you know which rung cracked. He spoke the minute into the memo app, so his voice would keep it too. The sound of his own breath behind the number made him steadier than he expected to be. He walked the east approach 50 yards and looked back, so chalk and dust could be a single picture in his head. Arms up, flashes dark, rails like a black suggestion across the road. He let his eyes sit on the stripes until they felt like part of the track, not paint sitting on top of it. Then he turned and did the same west. He touched the counterweight with 2 fingers and named the temperature just enough, cold. He pressed the chalk stub to his palm and named that too, warmer, because pockets lie. He wrote hardware cold, pocket warm to keep brain tricks from becoming evidence when the room gets loud tomorrow. Honest lists are a kind of prayer. He keyed dispatch, 128.7, setting tells, chalk east-west, dust mid, paper at door, observing. The office voice, copy, remain on scene. He pictured the sentence living on their tape and felt the tiny relief of being inside another record. He wrote dispatch copy tells and boxed it, so the box would do the remembering. He stood lane center again and set his timer to zeros. The star that had paced the mast earlier had walked a post width west. The wind still read nil. He reminded himself, you are not hunting, you are waiting. Waiting is how you respect a thing that may repeat. He put the pencil under the clip until it clicked, the sound he trusts. He looked once more at all three tells, the east stripe, the west stripe, the powder veil, the white tail at the door, and decided he could let the night be alone with them. He wrote the smallest line of the hour, tells set, watch. Then he leaned on the fender, breathed to 4, and let the road hold its breath for him. He let the truck idle off and took the night straight on. Engine ticked cool, then even that little clock quit. The road became a long thought without words. He breathed in 4s and watched the star clear the mast by a hand's width. When a place decides to hold still, you don't argue, you write what holds still. He checked the east chalk stripe from lane centre, one bright mark on dull polish, still whole. He checked the west stripe, same neat line, sharp heel to heel. Dust lay like a thin idea across 2 ties, even as sugar. The paper tail at the door seam hung motionless, a white hyphen holding a sentence together. He wrote all tells intact and underlined it once. In the ditch, a frog asked a question and changed its mind. Crickets worked like typewriters in another room. Far off, someone closed a barn with the sound wood makes when it forgives. He placed those noises where they belonged, over there, not here. The crossing kept its own quiet, a silence shaped like an answer he hadn't heard yet. He took 36 steps east and faced back. Rails became ruler again, crossbucks framed the thought, chalk stripes were thin commas in a long black sentence. He let his eyes soften until the whole scene felt single, then sharpened them to check the marks again. No change. He wrote east, good, at 46, so time could shake hands with place. Back at the bungalow, he set 2 fingers lightly on the padlock. Cold this time. Plain, convincing, the kind that doesn't leave a doubt behind. He didn't trust relief, but he let it put half an inch back in his shoulders. He wrote lock cold and kept the letters square. Square letters keep you honest when you're tempted to drift. He sat on the truck step with the clipboard on his knee. The pencil left a faint sheen where his thumb had warmed it. He sketched the island again, added tiny boxes for each tell, and drew arrows toward them so his brain wouldn't pretend they were background. He labeled the arrows with times. Arrows make a map out of watching. Windsock stayed kind, hung ribbon, no tricks. He tasted the air for rain or iron, got neither. A moth found his lamp, thought about it, left. He let the moth be smarter than it looked and took that as a kind omen. He wrote sock nil, air clean, moth declines, small facts that pin down bigger rooms. He checked the dust veil close, breathing across it to see how grains thought about moving. They rolled like marbles in a jar, loose, dry, happy to go if gravity asked. No smear marks, no diagonal telling him a heel had changed its mind. He put a dot in the margin and wrote powder, still reads, as set. He leaned his ear to the east rail for the old wire song. Teeth waited, bones listened. Nothing came but blood saying it was doing its job. He took that as another kind of receipt. No hum isn't nothing if you write it clean. He wrote it clean with the minute. No hum, 52, because seconds matter when meetings don't. He let his eyes rest and counted 5 slow breaths. Sometimes the trick is refusing tricks. He didn't reframe the night as omen or message. He gave it back its plain shape and asked for nothing. The crossing returned the favor. Arms high, flashes dark, bungalow square as a brick. He wrote midnight holds and drew a small box around the words. Before the minute changed, he walked once more between masts and looked at each tell like a clock face. East stripe hole, west stripe hole, dust veil even, paper tails still a white breath. He set the pencil under the clip until it clicked, a tiny mechanical yes, inside a larger maybe. Tells stable, observe, went on the line. and he let the period be enough. The minute rolled quiet toward row 57. He was lane center, eyes on the chalk, like a man watching his own pulse. Bells woke crisp, flashes painted the road red. He didn't move. Thumb found the dash timer. Click. Arms started down with the same careful weight, chain giving a half voice. He tasted for rail through his teeth. Nothing but his own blood saying present. He counted the drop on breath. 4, 5. Bars leveled across the asphalt. The bell tone held true, no wobble, like an instrument the night had tuned twice. He leaned into the open window and looked east, looked west. No headlight, no horn, no wheel song. The rails gave back dark, the deep kind that remembers what it's hiding. At 57:01, recorder time would later say, occupied. At 57:12, it would clear. He let the timer run and let his shoulders stay still because motion invites stories. 9, 10, 11. Bells stopped clean, arms rose polite as store doors. He thumbed the timer, 11.0. He wrote the number first, before thought could sand it down. He keyed the bungalow, screen waking soft. New block scrolled in the calm face. Occupied, 57:01, 57:12. 11 seconds again, drawn like a ruler line. He boxed the range and said it once under breath to hear how the minute sounded in a mouth. It sounded like a receipt that wanted to be believed. Axle counter pain surprised him. Trace dipped, 2 first, then stood up +2 before clearing. Backward math, a leaving without an arrive. He stared until his head tried to make it a redraw, and failed. He wrote 2+2 same window, and double-circled the arrow so future him wouldn't forget the order that made no sense. He cued the relay audio file he'd left rolling. Nothing extra, no click near the bookends, no chatter through the middle. Just the patient room sound of coils doing as asked. He logged relay quiet through OCC. Quiet is still a sound when you write it with the minute that needed it. Back outside, he walked straight to the tells. East chalk stripe, hole, bright heel to heel. West stripe, hole, the bright dust of chalk still sitting on dull steel. Dust veil across 2 ties, even as sugar, no smear, no slide. Paper tail at the door, seam, still a white hyphen. He wrote tells unchanged, Wukya 57 and underlined unchanged. He tried the lock with 2 fingers. Tonight it finally behaved like metal in clean cold, bit his skin, told no stories. He put the back of his knuckles to it anyway, then to the door, then to the truck mirror for control. Mirror door, lock again, the order he trusted. He wrote it small. Small truths carry big minutes. He hit the roadside cam menus and replayed the minute. Time code honest. Picture still a 4-second loop. Ditch grass shiver, moth mid-flight, return, right through the drop. He exported the block and saved the hash. It felt wrong to keep a lie so carefully, but careful is how you survive the meeting that hasn't happened. He stood mid-island and listened with teeth and ribs both. No wire hum, no push. He looked at the faint toe drag pencil dotted earlier, still crescent, still alone. Chalk stripes bright. Dust veil even. Paper tail quiet. He wrote the plainest sentence a night like this allows, 11 to O's, recorder, yes, axles, 2+2, cams loop, tells intact. He set the pencil under the clip until it clicked, a small, certain sound inside a larger, uncertain one. He set the dash screen to split view, east and west approaches side by side. Time codes marched clean, seconds in lockstep. Picture kept its bad habit, 4-second loop of ditch grass shiver, and 1 moth frozen mid-flight. He let both clips roll 6 cycles, then paused on the exact frame that felt like a lie. He wrote loop persists, Ashas T honest, in square letters. He exported Well 5640, well 5730 from both heads, wrapped in their native containers. Progress bars crept like cold glue. He pulled MD5 on each, 2 different strings, both stable when rechecked. Hashes don't care about mood. He wrote the short receipt, East MD5A9, West MD541. Repeat verified and boxed the pair, so they'd anchor the page. He toggled the cams to live and held his hand in each lens, then pulled away. Live view followed without lag. He flipped back to playback. Loop returned like it had rights. He wrote live OK, playback corrupted, and added firmware. 3.219, uptime 29, so no one could say reboot solved a night that wasn't a software ticket. He tried alternate streams, lower bit rate, different profile, grayscale. The loop lived in all of them, wearing the same 4-second face with different clothes. He exported again just to be boring. New hashes, same picture. He labeled the stick loop block ode 57 and slid it into the fleece pocket that doesn't forget. Receipts travel best with warm fabric. He synced the cams to NTP and checked offset, plus 100.1's east, plus 100.2's west. Honest clocks make better witnesses. He matched recorder stamps with time code 0:57:01, occupied, aligns to the moment the moth stops mid-wing. He wrote OCC, frame, moth, because metaphors aren't allowed, only arrows are. He walked to the cruiser and asked the deputy for his clip timestamp. 57 straight up, the man said, tapping the dash like it was a dog. They watched his video, bells and arms, no train, and no loop, just one long minute that didn't apologize. He wrote county cam continuous and drew a small check mark he rarely uses. Back at the pole, he switched the head to IR night mode and replayed the block. Grass went silver, moth vanished. The loop remained, the same 4 seconds, now in ghost. He exported and hashed the IR version too. 3 outfits, 1 story. He wrote IR loops, confirms and underlined the verb, so a meeting couldn't wiggle it later. He tried the oldest trick, hard power cycle on a single head, then replay from the server, not the device. Server's copy looped exactly where the head claimed it would. He made a small private sound that wasn't a word and wrote server agrees head. Agreement can be comforting or sharp. Tonight it cut. He set the 3 exports, color, low rate, IR across the dash, and read their hashes like license plates. He spoke them into the memo app because numbers spoken hold steadier in a mind. He saved the note, then saved it again. Nights like this eat first plates. He penciled hashes, logged twice so future him would see the belt and suspenders. He keyed dispatch. Maintainer 128.7, camera playback loops 4 seconds across the all-wall 57 drop, time code increments, live view normal, county dash continuous. The office voice, copy, upload to case. He wrote uploaded and let the word sit heavy. Proof was getting taller, explanations were getting shorter. He closed the cabinet and pressed 2 fingers to its skin. Plain cold, machinery, quiet. On the hood he drew the clean square. Recorder, yes, axles, 2+2, cams loop, county continuous. In the middle he wrote 11.0s and inked the dot hard. The dot was a nail. The minute didn't move, the pictures did. He let that thought stand without trying to be helpful. He took the padlock in 2 fingers and turned it like he was dialing calm. Metal bit back the cold he trusted. He said the time into the memo app, 01:02, so the door would know which minute it belonged to. He eased the hasp, set his palm to the skin, and let the hinge answer, slow. Doors make good witnesses when you give them time. He looked first to the seam high where the white paper tail should hang. Not there. On the floor, by the threshold rib, lay a torn strip, half-length, fuzzed edge. He crouched and matched edges by instinct. The torn grain leaned inward, not out. He said the word in to keep his hand honest. He wrote paper down, tear in and boxed in. He held the strip to the light inside the case. The lamp made a square on gravel. Dust floated like patient snow. The torn edge showed a tiny kink where the door lip had pinched before letting go. He photographed it next to the hinge screws, so Scale couldn't argue later. He saved 2 shots because nights like this eat first plates. He checked the seal along the jamb with a fingertip. Rubber kept its one soft line the way seals do when nobody has tried to be clever. No new polish on the latch tongue, the paint under the keeper stayed dull. He wrote, seal untouched, keeper dull, so future him wouldn't import suspense into a place that hadn't earned it. He stepped back and listened. Relay hum, polite even. No click to match the moment the paper should have fallen. He let the recorder run 30 seconds anyway, and named the file with the time and milepost. Sometimes a quiet minute is a better witness than the loud one you hoped for. He wrote hum only and left a thin margin after it. He checked the rack face. LEDs sat low and steady. Charger float at 13.4. Temp strip blue, no hunt on the supply. He laid a knuckle against the relay can and felt tin cold. Nothing more. He wrote power steady, temp blue. Boring lines are anchors. You tie them off and the rest tugs without taking you. He set the torn ribbon on the lid, aligned with the piece still stuck inside the seam. The fibers married too neatly to be coincidence. He photographed that join and read his own breath fog on the door skin, clearing from the edges first, center last. He didn't write the fog note, he put it in the same pocket as luck. He looked for his own sins. Had he brushed the tail when he checked the lock earlier? He replayed the motion in his head. Fingers to shackle, cheek to steel, palm to skin beside the hasp. No sweep high. He wrote self-clearance okay because admitting the question is part of telling the truth later. He closed the door and let it kiss the frame. The hasp fell into place like a key deciding to be a key. He locked it, tugged once, and let the pull be small. He slid the torn paper into the clear pouch with the event strip. Paper counts as a receipt when it falls on the right side of a hinge. He keyed dispatch. Maintainer 1287, paper tell at door fell, tear shows inward, case still locked prior. Office voice, copy, note, added. He pictured the line living on their tape and felt the room in his chest square a little. He wrote dispatch copy, ribbon inward, and underlined inward again, so the word couldn't wander. He stood back from the bungalow until the box was just a square in the dark and the rails were the line that runs through it. Chalk stripes, whole. Dust veil, even. Paper tail, gone, now, bagged. He set the pencil under the clip until it clicked. The click was a small door closing on a smaller room. The night kept the big room for itself. He set the meter leads on the bond posts like a ritual, red where red belongs, black where ground remembers its job. Display settled at a number that felt like a calm breath. He named it under his breath so the night would hear him be plain. Track volts 8.9, he wrote it, boxed it, and let the box hold the air around the number still. He laid the portable shunt across the head, gentle as a hand on a shoulder. The recorder flipped, occupied. The meter dipped to 0.0 and climbed back neat when he lifted. Good rules, good shoes. He did it again at 30-second spacing, then at 45, writing each dip with the minute. A pattern you make yourself is a leash for the one that won't heal. He moved to the insulated joint and bridged head-to-head with the bar. Same obedience, occupied, bells muted by him, clear on lift. He counted the bar's seconds in his mouth. 3, lift, 5, lift. So later, nobody could say he was sloppy with time. He wrote IJ shunt, obedient, and underlined the word, because a kind world occasionally deserves ceremony. He clipped the meter across the feed in the bungalow, rack, hum, patient, numbers steady. He tapped the face of the relay can with a knuckle. Tin answered tin. No click, chasing his tests. He logged supply constant, relay, untwitchy, and held the pencil there until the line felt like ballast under his shoes. He scrolled the recorder back to 011 and compared its timing to his new, deliberate shunts. The drop-and-clear rhythm from earlier mapped clean to his test cadence, human rhythm versus ghost rhythm, same geometry. He wrote ghost cadence, W mine, and drew two small waveforms that touched at their knees. Drawing it made his chest feel wider. At mid-island, he took the shunt off entirely and watched the meter alone. Every 30 seconds he breathed deep, counted 8, and waited for the number to twitch without his hand. It did not. He wrote no spontaneous dip and boxed no, because absence is slippery if you don't pin it to the page. He set the probe on the wheel sensor test pads, LED agreed green. History still showed that 0.4's wheel present earlier. He induced a 1-second pass with the bar. History logged it right. None of the backward math the axle counter liked. He wrote wheel present honest and felt the relief of a machine that doesn't try to be a poet. He closed the joint box, sat on the bumper, and matched times aloud. 011021113, 026032612, 057015712. The mouth made a metronome his bones could follow. He drew 3 vertical lines on the page and labeled them 11. Seeing them side by side made the night look like it had a favorite number. He looked at the torn paper tail bagged in the pouch and let the thought he didn't want sit. The door had breathed inward sometime between tells and ribbon. He wrote door inhaled in the margin, small, then crossed the word and replaced it with bowed. Words matter. He boxed bowed in and let the box be louder than his throat. He keyed dispatch. Maintainer 1287 induced shunts clean, recorder aligns, no spontaneous dips, wheel present honest, note, door, seam paper fell earlier, tear shows in. Office voice, copy, continue monitoring. He wrote, continue, and underlined it. Underlines are little contracts you make with yourself in public. He stood lane center again, meter hung by its strap, and looked at his tells like clock faces, east chalk hole, west chalk hole, dust veil even, door tail gone and bagged. He added a 5th tell he hadn't planned, the shape of his own breath in the cold, clearing from the edges first. He didn't write that. He wrote tests, complete, observe, and let the period weigh more than it should. He took the footpath along the right-of-way where grass learned steel. The siding lay a 1/4 mile west, short, straight, used by locals who know how quiet keeps. Windsock still read nil. He let the world shrink to ballast, tie, plate, a place that small will tell on itself if you ask it with slow boots and empty hands. Siding wheel stops wore old chalk from 3 months back, faint scars where someone taught brakes to behave. He photographed each stop and said the dates into the memo so his mouth would help memory. Chalk lines looked tired but honest. No crisp break, no fresh thumb. He wrote old chalk intact and boxed old so later couldn't pretend it was new. He walked the gauge side, eyes at flange height. Rust had that soft cinnamon that likes to stay put. Then a smear, thumb wide, 8 inches long, fresh, bright against the old dull. 1 stroke, no companion streak above or below. He crouched until his breath fogged the rail. The smear hid nothing under it, just shine where something sure had leaned. He checked for proof he could hold. A curl of metal, a shaving, a burr. Nothing loose. He touched the bright with a glove knuckle and felt only smooth. He photographed it from 3 angles, scale card in frame, watch face reflected. He wrote fresh smear, actual flange height, single stroke, and circled single twice, so the word couldn't wobble. He searched for a second mark the way a mind reaches for symmetry. None. No drag up the web, no scuff below the base, no stone scratched out of line. Just that one clean decision in the steel. He backed off 4 ties and looked again, so the rail could be a sentence and the smear a comma. It's still read wrong. He set a new tiny chalk tick at the tail of the smear, his mark, heel to web, so he'd know if the bright grew teeth. He tapped the rail with the chalk, so dust settled where it liked, then pocketed the stub. He wrote siding mark set and drew a little map of the siding with an X where the bright lived. He checked ballast beneath for roll or skid. None. Powder lay even, larger rock kept its sharp faces. He pinched dust and dropped it. Grains fell like dry should, no clump, no oil skin. He wrote no ballast disturbance and let the line sit quiet. Sometimes the ground saying no is bigger than the rail saying maybe. He stood, matched the siding to the main with his eyes, and measured nothing with the kind of care you save for knives. The main wore night, the siding wore sleep. He listened with teeth, no far wire. He listened with ribs, no push. He wrote siding quiet and under it, smaller, bright, fairly recent. He did not write why, not yet. He walked the stops again and felt each with a palm. Concrete gave back the day it kept, not much. He checked the end lock on the hand throw, pinned, cotter seated, paint dull. No sweat prints, no glove shine. He wrote derail secure, throw pinned, so a meeting wouldn't ask him later why he missed the obvious. He stood where both tracks fit in one frame and took a slow pan on video, main to siding, siding to smear, smear to chalk tick, tick to wheel stop. He narrated the time and the milepost in the same steady grocery voice. He saved, then saved again, because nights like this eat first plates. Siding SM1 went on the file name. Back at Lane Center, he added a clean square to the hood map. Siding, fresh smear, flange height, 1 stroke, ballast undisturbed, mark set. He pressed the pencil dot hard in the square's middle so the thought would stay put. He looked once down the siding. It looked back without moving. He let that be the answer for now. Radio woke soft in his cab, the desk voice made small by distance. 1287, panel shows an 11-second occupancy just now. Same block you're on. He looked at the rails at his boots and then at the sky, as if either would volunteer a reason. He said, standing center, road empty, no headlight, no bell, no wire song. The carrier breathed once and held. He thumbed the dash timer out of habit and watched zeros blink like a pulse that refused to start. Nothing around him moved, arms high, flashes dead. Wind sock a neat ribbon that had forgotten it was cloth. "Say again," he told the radio, slow. "Copy 11 seconds, dispatch said, steady as rain reading a schedule. He wrote panel 11s while present and drew a square around present. He walked to mid-island and set 2 fingers on the web to borrow Steele's truth, cold, unmoved, no tremor under bone. He pressed his molars together to test for that far line the wire sends when weight thinks about you. Nothing. He let the lack be counted. No hum during panel OCC went on the line, and he boxed no so it couldn't soften later. He checked the tells like clock faces. East chalk stripe, hole. West stripe, hole. Dust veil, even. Door, ribbon. Bagged and riding in his vest. Siding, smear. Bright, his tiny chalk tick untouched. He wrote, tells hold during panel OCC and underlined, hold. Underlines are small fences. They keep the sheep where the story needs them. He keyed the bungalow and woke the recorder. Screen scrolled clean. No new, occupied, in the exact minute dispatch claimed. He took a photo of the no, watch face in frame, then a second for luck. He wrote recorder no, panel yes, and set the pencil down to keep his hand from suggesting answers his eyes didn't see. Axle counterpane stayed the horizon line it had loved all night. No +2, no 2. He printed the flat and clipped it beside the earlier waveforms like a teacher taping papers that disagree. Axel's none joined the page in square letters. He didn't sigh. Sighs are for after, not inside a minute. He stepped back into the lane and let the silence do its job. The road gave him crickets and a far dog, but no train, no truck. No doubt he could hold up to a room. "District," he said into the mic, "I'm on the rails. During your 11 we had nothing. No drop, no bell, no hum." The office quiet stretched long enough to make a thought. Dispatch came back lower, like leaning into the handset. Copy your nothing. Panel logged it. Timestamp L1-13-27-L1-13-38. Adjacent blocks stayed clear. He wrote the range and circled adjacent clear because circles make good anchors when the page tries to slide. He said the times back to harden them. Numbers behave better when you make them say their names. He lifted the padlock and let it touch his cheek. Not for warmth this time, only to have something he could call a control. Cold, convincing. He put his palm on the bungalow skin and felt the same answer. He wrote lock cold, case cold, to stop the old thought from sneaking back into this new minute. He set the dash to split. Camera live left, exported loop. Right. Left showed ordinary road and honest stillness. Right repeated the moth at 4-second mercy, indifferent to 0113. He wrote live, still. Still loop repeats, and felt a small anger he could use. Anger that sharpens pencils and straightens lines. He drew a simple square on the hood map. Panel yes, recorder no, axles no, me present. In the middle he wrote 11.0's earbuds 01-13-27 and pressed the dot hard enough to score the paper. He told the night, "I'm writing your shape, not your reason." The night didn't mind. It kept the reason for itself. Bells woke again like a decision he'd already met. He didn't move. Thumb hit the dash timer. Numbers started their calm climb. Arms came down with that practiced weight, chains giving half a voice. He tasted for rail through his teeth. Nothing. He watched east, then west. No headlight, no horn. The road took the red wash without offering a reason back. He let the timer run instead of thinking. 4, 5 bars leveled across asphalt. The bell tone held perfect, as if tuned by a hand that liked neat minutes. He breathed to it, steady. At 11 he felt the tone cut clean, the kind of stop that means a rule has been satisfied. Arms rose polite as doors in a store that forgives. He keyed the bungalow before the quiet finished landing. Recorder screen scrolled new. Occupied. In 1904. 011915, 11 seconds, ruler straight. He boxed the span and said it once, low, to make it heavier than his thoughts. He took a photo with watch face in the frame, then a second shot so later wouldn't eat the first. Axle counterpane finally behaved like a tool that wanted keeping. +2 at the front edge, 2 at the back, both inside the 11 like bookends. He printed the trace and clipped it to the board. Axles agree went on the line, square letters, no sugar. Agreement can calm or cut. Tonight it sharpened the page. He slid to the wheel present pads. History added a 0.5's blip, neatly nested in the block. He induced a 1-second test for control. History logged both, clean. WP present joined the list. For once the room of instruments stood in the same posture, all raising the same hand for a name he didn't want to call. He stepped out to his tells. East chalk stripe, hole. West stripe, hole. Dust veil, even as sugar, no diagonal, no roll. Paper tail, bagged, not replaced. Siding smear, still bright. His tiny chalk, tick, untouched. He wrote tells intact, rule 0119, and underlined, intact. Underlines are fences you trust when roads decide to be rivers. He cued the roadside playback out of habit and watched the moth live inside its 4-second mercy again. Ditch grass, shiver, return, repeat, right through 0119. Time code honest, picture unhelpful. He exported the block and logged the hash without expecting the world to say thank you. Loop persists, took its square place. He stood lane center and listened with teeth and ribs both. No wire hum, no push. Only blood doing its small work, and the far dog that didn't know it was a witness. He wrote the sentence he'd hoped for and didn't want. Recorder, yes. Axles, yes. Wheel, yes. Cams loop, me, nothing. He pressed the dot at the end hard enough to feel. He keyed dispatch, maintainer 128.7, activation 011904011915, recorder, axles, wheel present, all agree, no train observed. Office voice came back, soft but sure. Copy agree, panel matches. He wrote panel matches and let the words sit heavy. Matching makes meetings taller and explanations shorter. He checked the padlock with 2 fingers out of reflex. Cold, convincing. He touched the door, then the truck mirror for control. Mirror, door, lock, same order. He didn't write it this time. He let the habit keep its own quiet. He put the pencil under the clip until it clicked, a small proof of obedience in a night that didn't care. He drew the clean square on the hood map. Recorder, yes. Axles, yes. Wheel, yes. Panel, yes. Cams, lie. In the middle, he wrote 11.0's Erador 119 and inked the dot dark. The square looked like a box built right and empty inside. He closed the board and let the emptiness be the part the night kept for itself. He let the truck light the desk inside the bungalow and made a small office out of night. Thumb drive in, recorder set to export. He pulled 011, 026, or 57, or 113, 119, the 5 minutes that now owned the shift. Progress bars crawled like cold glue. He labeled each with milepost and range so names wouldn't forget which spine they were supposed to sit on. Event strips printed warm and thin, occupied blocks landed like ruler marks, edges clean, 11, 9, 11, panel only 11. He penciled arrows at each start and end, then boxed the numbers the way you box a fact you will have to say aloud later. He photographed the paper beside his watch face, 2 clocks agreeing looks like truth, even when you're tired. Axle counter export came out white and quiet. Pleat 2 toe and 2 for 011, flat for 026, 2 plus 2 backward at 057, flat for 0113, clean plus 2, then 2 at 0119. He clipped each under its sibling event strip like a teacher pinning 2 insects that shouldn't share a jar. Axles disagree, then agree, went on the top page, square letters, no sugar. He opened the wheel present log. History showed 0.4s inside the 9, nothing at panel only, 0.5s living neat in the last 11. He induced one 1-second test and watched it join the list exactly where it should. He wrote WP honest and drew a tiny check mark he rarely uses. Small checks keep meetings from borrowing your voice. He cued the relay audio, the room's hum played back like patient weather. At the marks, no click chorus, no chatter, just coils behaving, while the recorder wrote occupied with a straight face. He added the audio hash to the margin and wrote hum only through events. Quiet, when dated, is a receipt. You just have to teach a room to read it. Camera exports lined the dash, east color, west color, IR blocks, each a 4-second loop with honest timecode. He spoke the MD5 strings into the memo so the numbers would live in a second house. County dash sat beside them on his screen. Continuous minute at 057 and 0119, bells and arms, no loop. He wrote dash continuous odd heads loop and underlined dash once. He gathered the tells. East chalk stripe, hole, west stripe, hole, dust veil even, door, ribbon, bagged and tagged, siding smear, bright with his tiny tick untouched. He photographed each tell close, then wide with the milepost in frame, then wider still so no one could accuse the pictures of being cut from some other road. Captions carried times like labels on jars. GPS track drew a neat oval around the crossing and a straight walk to the siding and back. He screenshotted the breadcrumb and wrote the coordinates under each event range so place could shake hands with time. Stayed on site, got its own box. Boxes are small fences you can carry. Later, when someone pushes, you point to the fence. He zipped the case folder, MP 128.7 No Train, YMDD. Inside lived event strips, axle traces, wheel present CSV, audio WAV, cam exports with hashes, deputy clip reference, photos of tells, GPS screenshot, and his typed summary lines. He uploaded to the ticket number dispatch gave and waited for the tiny uploaded to turn true. When it did, he let his shoulders put down a half-inch. He printed the one-page summary for daylight, 5 bullets, 1 sentence each, what happened, what didn't, what agreed, what lied, what I touched. He stapled the paper tailbag beside it in a clear sleeve. Paper changes tone with a staple. It sounds resolved even when it isn't. He wrote packet built because naming a thing makes it hold still. Before he killed the desk light, he laid the last neat square on his hood map. Recorder, yes, no. Axles, yes, no. Wheel, yes, no. Panel, yes. Cams loop. Dash, continuous. Tells intact. Me, present. In the middle he wrote the number that kept choosing him. 11 pose. He inked the dot until it wouldn't take more ink. Then he let the dot be a nail and the night be the board it refused to leave. Daylight took the edges off the road like someone sanded the night. He poured the last of his thermos into a paper cup and didn't drink it. The bungalow looked smaller with colour on it. He read the hood map once more, square by square, then left it open so a fresh set of eyes could see the shape without him. Supervisor's truck rolled gravel soft. He stepped out with coat over one finger, face that said he'd slept. "Walk me," he said. They stood where he'd stood, lane center, then mast, then island. He talked in receipts, not theories. Times, lengths, hashes, chalk stripes, dust veil, ribbon torn inward, siding smear, panel only, cams loop, dash, continuous. He kept his voice small. Supervisor listened the way rails do, still but carrying. He checked the east chalk line with a thumbnail and nodded when it came away white. He looked at the paper tailbag and turned it twice without opening. He did not touch the siding smear. He photographed it from his height. "Okay," he said, which can mean enough or keep going. They crowded into the bungalow's doorway, shoulders almost meeting. He laid out the packet, event strips, axle traces, wheel present CSV, audio hash, cam exports with MD5, deputy reference, GPS breadcrumb. Supervisor read, not fast, and used his pen like a finger following a hymn. When he hit panel only, Go 113, he grunted once, the sound ongoing problems make. "Glitch?" the man said, testing the word like a bridge plank. "Wires don't print inward tears," he answered, soft. He pointed at the photo where the paper fibers married neat, torn toward the rack. Supervisor's pen hovered, then moved. He wrote glitch in the form's cause box, tidy block letters. He added monitor in follow-up and boxed it like a promise that could be kept. They replayed the county dash clip at Wirral 57 bells and arms uninterrupted minute. Supervisor's jaw worked like he was trying a seed shell. "Head still looping?" "Yes," he said. "Time code honest, picture repeats." "Good sentence," the man said, and wrote it exactly. Time code honest, picture repeats. A copied sentence is a small victory. It lives beyond you. He checked the padlock with 2 fingers and gave a small nod when metal bit back as it should. He pressed his cheek to the door skin because he's old enough to trust skin. Cold, he said. That word always feels like clean paper. He didn't mention the hour it hadn't been. He'd given that to the packet. The packet could carry it now. They walked to the siding smear. Morning showed it clearer, one thumb wide bright at flange height, his own tiny chalk tick still crisp at the tail. Supervisor crouched slow, knees making the sound knees make. "One stroke," he said. "No friend." He stood, wrote one stroke, no companion, into the margin of his mind, then into the form's notes. Back at the truck, Supervisor signed the summary like a notary for a day that didn't care. "File it. Stay reachable," he said. He touched the roof once, an old habit that makes a truck a co-worker. Then he surprised the morning by putting a hand on the bungalow and saying thank you to metal that doesn't believe in thanks. "Anything else you want in there?" he asked. He thought of breath clearing from edges first, of quiet minutes with a relay that refused to be dramatic, of a padlock that learned cold late. He shook his head. "Everything that can be counted is counted." Supervisor nodded, the way a man nods when a sentence is shaped right even if it won't help. Supervisor left the word glitch behind like a towel laid flat. The form closed with a staple that sounded like the end of a small song. He watched the truck turn the curve and fit itself to the day. He looked once more at his tells, chalk hole, dust even, ribbon bagged, smear bright, and let the quiet mean exactly what it said. Morning has decided nothing. He stayed after the signatures, not for duty, just to make the room square in his head. Sun took the frost off the ditch grass and gave the rails back their brown. He walked lane center one last time, slow enough for small truths to keep up. Arms high, flashes dead, wind, soccer ribbon with no opinion. He let the quiet be counted, then kept counting. He checked the east chalk stripe. Hole, west stripe, hole. He knelt and breathed across the dust veil. Grains rolled like marbles in a jar, loose, dry, unbothered. The paper tail lived now in a clear bag with a staple that sounded finished. He wrote nothing. Words would only make the picture smaller than it was. He walked to the tie with his pencil dot. Night's faint toe drag had dried to a lighter crescent, center last, like heat leaving a handprint. He set a finger beside it and didn't touch. Bored cool, the mark didn't want his help. He stood and let the rail be a straight thought again. Straight thoughts are the only ones worth taking home. He checked the siding once more. The bright smear at flange height still read like one decision. Thumb wide, 8 inches, no companion. His tiny chalk tick at the tail stayed crisp. He photographed the whole frame and didn't look at the screen. Trust the camera to do its job. Save your eyes for the parts that won't hold still. Back at the bungalow, he laid his palm flat on the door skin. Cold, convincing. He balanced the padlock in 2 fingers and let bone choose. Same answer. He held the bagged ribbon to the light and saw fibers leaning inward where they'd married. He slid it back into the sleeve and closed the flap. Some things are done only by being kept. He stood where both tracks fit in one picture, main to siding, siding to smear, smear to chalk tick, tick to wheel stop. He named what agreed: recorder, axles, wheel present, panel. He named what didn't: heads that looped, a door that inhaled once, a padlock that learned cold late. He didn't say why, that wasn't his job and never is. He set the clipboard on the hood and drew the final square. What happened, what didn't, what agreed, what lied, what I touched. In the center, he wrote the number the night had chosen over and over, 11 pose. He pressed the dot after it until the paper would take no more ink. Nails hold wood, dots hold minutes. He closed the board and put the pencil under the clip. The click sounded like a small door, learning manners. He tried dispatch once more out of habit. 12, 8.7 clearing. Office voice. Copy clear. He let the handset rest face down so its warmth wouldn't pretend to be proof, and watched the word clear mean only going. He climbed into the cab and rolled forward a length, then stopped. In the mirror, the crossbucks made neat white X in daylight, letters that couldn't imagine being wrong. He watched the mast until the star he'd used as a clock was gone from the daytime sky. Some tools retire when the sun shows up. He thanked it anyway. He eased out the road, tires finding asphalt like they'd been told. At the last second, he braked and stepped back down, drawn by nothing he could name. Mid-island, he crouched again. The toe drag still held, but thinner now, edges dry, center giving up last. He put his hand on the wood beside it and felt nothing but bored. He stood and let the crossing keep its shape, arms high, flashes quiet, rails patient. He didn't promise the night anything. He didn't ask it either. He said the line he could live with in any room, everything that can be counted is counted. Then he drove, and the road took him, and behind him the rails remembered how to say nothing for exactly as long as they wanted. 3 days later, the ticket grew a sibling in the system, related panel only, 11's 2 subdivisions over. He wasn't on that district, but the note smelled familiar through the screen. Panel yes, recorder no, axles no, road quiet. He stared until the shape of the sentence fit his night. He wrote the milepost on his palm so it wouldn't wash. He called the maintainer over there. Same grocery voice, different gravel. The man said their cams froze 4 seconds too, time code honest, picture stubborn. No deputy, no ribbon, no chalk, wind that never learned how. They both let the silence hold the line a second, then wrote loop elsewhere like it was a weather word, not a story. He pulled his packet again in the shop light. Paper sounded flatter in daytime, staples looked louder. Ribbon inward sat in its sleeve like a kept breath. He read his own square letters and didn't change them. Changing words after sunrise is how you teach them to lie. He slid the packet back and locked it like it could learn. Supervisor forwarded a stray email from a signal engineer with polite shoes. Rare resonant shunt. Treat as nuisance. He typed AC and didn't send it. Instead, he wrote resonant, a horn word, not receipt, on a sticky, and hid it in the packet spine. If a word wants to sit at the table, it can bring timestamps or go home. He walked the yard where spare heads sleep and checked firmware with a tired thumb. 3.219 blinked back from 4 of them. One wore 3.218 like an old coat. He pictured a moth trapped in a jar, beating the same 4 seconds against clean glass. He wrote bench test later and circled bench because some problems prefer a table. He pulled the county dash file again and scrubbed to 0057. Continuous minute, bells and arms, no loop, no train. He watched until his own face found itself in the reflection and looked away. He wrote dash stays true. Truth that insists on being boring is still truth and maybe the kind you take home. He drove past his crossing on the way to a different job at dusk. Arms up, flashes dead. Wind sock a ribbon remembering there is such a thing as wind. He slowed, not stopping, and counted stripes with his eyes. The chalk had weathered itself off like a good sentence used up. He let it go. Tells retired went on a scrap in his pocket. He walked the siding smear at lunch 2 days later. Bright was dimmer. His tiny chalk tick had bled dust into nothing. Still one stroke, no friend. He pushed a thumbnail on the shine and felt only smooth like a memory polished by talking. He wrote smear aging and let the page decide how to carry a bruise. He set a bench head to playback and fed it the moth clip. The bench looped too, 4 seconds neat, time code honest. He unplugged NTP, changed bitrate, forced IR, the loop wore different clothes and kept its dance. He wrote loop portable and underlined portable. A trick that travels is not a quirk, it's a choice. He pushed the same clip to an old 3.2 18 head and watched it choke, then play straight. No loop, just a moth that finally left. He wrote loop likes 3.2 19 and drew a small arrow no one had asked for. Arrows aren't proof, they're just the way a hand hopes a room will agree later. He filed a note no one had asked for. Heads 3.2 19 loop 4 seconds on some blocks. Time code honest. County dash continuous. Treat playback as suspect during field events. He clicked save and watched the word turn real. He didn't write glitch. He didn't write haunted. He wrote the part that could be counted and left the rest sitting on the rails. A week later, he took the long way home and let the two-lane pick his speed. The crossing showed ahead like a thought he'd already had. Arms high, flashes dead, pasture fence ticking the mirror. He rolled windows an inch to taste the air. Cool, plain, no message. He let the truck idle down until gravel admitted him without complaint. He stood lane center and gave the place a full minute like it was a favor. Rails took the sky and made it straighter. Ditchwater kept one thin cloud and let it go. He breathed in fours and wrote nothing. Minutes you don't write can keep you honest as much as the ones you do. He walked to the mast and set 2 fingers under the counterweight. Cold, convincing. Hinge plate wore its polite dust. The cable hanger said yes in the way wire says yes when it hasn't been taught to invent. He put the yes back where he found it and didn't make it bigger. He opened the bungalow slow enough for hinges to remember they could be quiet. Lamp painted its thin square on gravel. Relay hum kept the same patient note the room had learned years ago. He said hello to a box that didn't care and felt better for the habit. He wrote room honest and let the word be heavy for its size. He set his palm on the door skin and his cheek to the lock the way a man trusts bone. Cold, cold, the order he likes. He let the words stand in his head without needing paper. Once he might have pressed longer to see if the print stayed. He didn't. Some tests belong to nights that are over. He walked mid-island to the tie he'd dotted. Rain had sanded the crescent down to a lighter idea. Center last still, if he squinted his memory against the grain. He set a finger a board away and let the wood be only wood. He didn't take a picture. Keeping a mark too long is a way of lying to yourself. He looked down the siding for the smear. It was there if your eyes wanted it, thumb wide, faint as advice, his little chalk tick gone to weather. He let it be history and didn't try to teach it again. "Okay," he said to Steele. Steele said nothing back, which is what Steele is best at when you've asked enough. He keyed the radio out of muscle memory. 128.7 passing through. Dispatch gave the office calm. Copy clear. He put the handset face down so its warmth wouldn't pretend to be proof and watched the word clear mean only the small thing it means. He was going. He wrote one sentence on a clean line in the pocket notebook he doesn't turn in. Everything that can be counted is counted. He didn't sign it. He closed the little book and put it beside the pencil that always smudges like 2 tools that know the other's weight. He climbed in, rolled forward a length, then stopped and looked once more, arms high, flashes quiet, rails patient. He didn't ask the night to promise anything next time. He let it keep its tricks and its minutes. Then the truck took the road like he'd taught it, and the crossing stayed behind, practicing how to say nothing for exactly as long as it wanted. That's it. Real times, real receipts, no answers offered. If this kept you company, leave your city and the time on your screen before you go. What were you listening on? iPhone, Android, TV, car, or earbuds? When we're done here, there's another night waiting. Try last ferry, turnstile paid, no boat. Same rules, different water. If you want more of these, tap subscribe. New stories roll in nightly. Sleep well, or at least sleep honest.